All right, everybody, welcome back and welcome first-time listeners as well to another season and another episode of Guru Fantasy World podcast. This will be the first episode of the season. We are 3 days out from the NFL draft, 2 days when this will be released tomorrow. So we're here. We've done the research. We've all discussed and debated and argued about these rookies for going on months now. We've done the deep dives. Now it's just time to, talk about some of the debates which are still kind of left unresolved as we head into the draft weekend. So we're going to kind of touch on some of those debatable topics and just kind of pick our guest's mind and just see what he thinks about some of these 2025 rookies. We're just going to have a little bit of fun. It's a returning guest. He's the guy who I like to have on first every single year. You guys should know him by now. If you don't, I don't know what you're doing. Kevin Coleman, a.k.a. Du Bois, I like to call him as well, as you know him on Twitter, at DuBois_22 on Twitter. A big part of the Devi Royale as well. He's been killing it. Cowboys fan. Talk to me a little bit, Kevin, about how you are, what you're thinking about the Cowboys draft going into Thursday, what you're hoping for maybe. What are your thoughts?
No, I appreciate you having me on once a year. I like that we do this right before the draft. Cowboys, they're going to break my heart like usual. That's usually how it goes. I'm interested to see, though, because really, they do obviously need the running back, but maybe not so much, depending on what they think of Javonte. But wide receiver, I think you're hearing a lot of buzz about possibly Ted McMillan being there. And, if you would have told me, I don't know, 2 months ago that the Cowboys had a shot at Ted at 12, I'd be like, you're crazy because Ted's going to go top 10. And so, now that you're hearing that buzz out there, I get a little worried. We're going to talk about it maybe. Matthew Golden going at 12. That's a little early for my liking as a Dallas fan. I would love to see Ted being there. But if it's not a wide receiver, I really think they're going to go edge. I think they got to go the defensive side there. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think this draft it has a bunch of variables after probably, 4, 3, even maybe 3 if Shador goes there too with the Giants. So it's going to be a fun draft at least.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Matthew Golden a little bit. He's on the show sheet later, but I'm comfortable enough. We're just going to skip around or whenever. We're just going to have a conversation. Talk about, you say you're kind of worried about him. Talk about the skill set, because a lot of that mentioning of Golden to Dallas is kind of about adding that speed element to Dallas. And, also we're having mostly a fantasy conversation where kind of it's easier to say Tet over Golden. But in terms of real life value, that's more of, I guess, a conversation some of these teams are having where Golden adds that speed element. So talk about Matthew Golden a little bit and why you kind of don't want Dallas taking him at 12.
Okay, so to be clear, I like Matthew Golden. So I don't want people to think that I'm a hater. I look at our team and I think that CD would be great in the slot. And I think CD does a great job there, whereas Tech can be really that outside guy. Where I think Matthew, I don't know how I think Matthew can play outside, but I do think he's limited there a little bit, where I think Matthew could be much more versatile inside too, where a team can use him in that way. So I just don't think the fit works for me from a Dallas perspective. As far as Matthew goes, I was a big proponent. If you follow us, we do a lot of Debbie stuff, college football stuff. So Matthew to me was my guy. 3 years ago, I used to argue with Jay Stein over Matthew versus Luther Burden. I was doing that argument years ago, and I like Matthew. My biggest thing was, dude, athleticism through the roof, and he's shown that, right? We've seen that in terms of his pre-draft stuff and everything there. And from a tape perspective, wins every type of route, outstanding concentration, body control. He does a lot of great things. Underrated yard after catch. He creates yards after catch. I think from an analytical perspective, he's not going to check a ton of boxes. So there's going to be concerned about his breakouts. There's context needed there. Especially with Houston the first 2 years. Last year, Quinn Ewers is terrible. I don't know if you guys have watched Quinn Ewers play football, but really, really struggles from an accuracy perspective. So, I get the naysayers on that side. I understand, the profile. But from just a generalization of what he does in film, it's good. You like what he's there. Now, but I don't think he's a top 12 talent. And I have a hard time putting Emeka Buka behind him. I think Emeka is one of the most underrated players in this class. So I just look at him being he's my wide receiver 4. And for that reason, I would hate to see Dallas reach up to form at 12.
Yeah. The thing with Matthew Golden, I'll say this, it's not all bad analytically. He was involved as a true freshman, which is something I like to see. I think he led the team, Houston, in touchdowns the second year and dealt with injuries. So it's not like he was just has this terrible analytical profile, but obviously the yards per out run is low, the career below 2 yards per out run. That's concerning. You look at his reception perception profile for Matthew Golden. He was 44th, 77th, and 50th percentile versus man zone and press. So good against zone, about average versus man and press. So he's good, but top 12, I would have to agree, is like a little bit of a reach. It kind of feels like that kind of Henry Ruggs pick a little bit, years ago, where it's like, all right, he's probably a first round prospect. Was he that good of a prospect? Or are they just kind of overrating the speed a little bit? So yeah, Tet McMillan, I would agree. I think he's a better prospect than Matthew Golden. I would say even in real life, just not just fantasy. He's a guy who just checks a lot more, especially analytically. He came in as a highly recruited player, 4-star, 97 prospect grade, put up 700 yards as a true freshman. The only other guys other than Tet McMillan to put up 2 seasons with 1,200 plus yards, declare early and get drafted round 1 are Marvin Harrison Jr. and Sammy Watkins. That's it in the past 10 years. So he was very productive, declared early. You see basically every analytical box be checked by him. So I think Dallas fans, I think that would be a great pick to see. Mm-hmm. Definitely hoping more running back in round 2 when you look at some of the guys available. And we'll skip kind of ahead to another question, because a guy who I could see them taking in round 2 would be a guy like Quinshon Judkins. And he's somebody who's kind of falls in that range where they'll be picking in round 2. And I like Judkins a lot, but there are some concerns about his missed tackle force and his yak per attempt rates. Like, even though he was a highly productive player, the efficiency metrics and the peripherals, they don't look good. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on Judkins and whether those things are concerning to you and to what extent.
So I think he'd be a great day 2 guy. If he's going to be there for Dallas, that'd be a good fit. I think he actually fits pretty well in that system too, because when you're looking at him, like just from like a film base, because that's generally speaking what I look at. Physical downhill guy, really good lower body strength. And the thing is too, when you watch him, the missed tackle force thing I think is a little misleading, because when you see him play, he has very good patience, vision, footwork, and he finds running lanes, right? So like maybe he's getting knocked because of his ability to find open spaces, right? He doesn't have to produce all those. I kind of throw out the Ohio State year because he's sitting there with Travion Henderson. They're splitting work. I don't necessarily love using that one kind of outlier season for him. His first 2 years, I mean, people forget his freshman year. He had over 1,500 yards in the SEC as a true freshman in the SEC. I mean, he was phenomenal. Like, people were talking about him being one of the best backs in the country. All of a sudden, just like his first 3 games of the year, like he was that special there. And when you're looking at everything that he does, I don't see how you don't see a very good plug and play 3-down guy, because I do think his receiving is a little underrated. He has reliable hands as a receiver. I think that he can develop into a passing game guy. He didn't have to do that at Ole Miss, and obviously at Ohio State, they don't have to throw to their running backs at Ohio State. They don't need to. Like, they have just a ridiculous receiving work there. So from just all expenses paid, when you look at it like just the guys in the second and third round, Quinshon Judkins checks the box of being like an early down and 3-down guy. And that's what you kind of like from a fantasy perspective. And if he landed himself into Dallas, can you imagine how much he'd go up the boards? People are going to talk themselves out of Judkins yet. And then he goes to Dallas, they're going to be like, oh, well, that's a first round pick. Easy. That's a top 10 because just it fits, right? And that's what you have to do with a lot of these running backs. So to an extent, I get it, because a lot of these running backs, and it's a cop out to say they're landing spot dependent. They're not. Like, they are very talented. But a guy like Judkins, if he gets a spot where they're going to utilize him early down and receiving work, he can be number 1 in the depth chart in April. That's what you want. And then that's just going to check the boxes there. I think from a runner, he's excellent. Like, he's a top 5 guy to me. And I don't see how people can't have him in their top 5.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 1,500 plus yards as a true freshman in the SEC. The only other running backs to post 1,500 plus rushing yards and 15 plus rushing touchdowns and get drafted, in the SEC as true freshmen and get drafted, in the first 2 rounds are Ryan Williams and Adrian Peterson. So you have some other guys who fell down the draft board, weren't really viewed as good prospects after posting 1,515 as a freshman. But the guys who got drafted by the NFL who did it, it's Ryan Williams who blew out his knee, and then it's Adrian Peterson and Judkins. So that was really good. And even though the YAC figures weren't great, 3.38, 3.21 per attempt in his 2 seasons at Ole Miss, those were a little bit influenced by the fact he had 270 plus carries. So the volume is going to be affected there. He kind of, like you said, got the dirty work at Ohio State. So not exactly runs that are meant to generate lots of yardage a lot of time.
Yeah.
The grading was great. He had 90 plus PFF rushing grade in 2 out of 3 seasons. Never below an 87.1 PFF rushing grade. So he was graded well. Then we talk about the athleticism. When he went to the combine, I was not expecting that. He was the first running back ever to post an 11-foot plus broad jump at 220 plus pounds. So you're like, all right, this guy is super productive. He's super athletic. He's probably going to get drafted in round 2. I mean, he can't be that bad based on the YAC and missed tackle force figures. He just can't be. No. So to me, it's a guy I'm going to be in on. It's a guy I'm not going to knock down. Like, I don't have him in Travion Henderson's tier because of those YAC and missed tackle force concerns. And like you said, the receiving, he was below 1 yard per out run in his career. So it's a little bit of a concern, even though I think, like you said, he's probably functional. But if not Dallas, I've seen some others. Like, the downside would be more like going to a place like Cincinnati, where they have a guy like Chase Brown and it's more of a committee, and you see him probably fall more into that 2nd round range in rookie drafts. But he's a guy who I like. It's hard not to like him when you look at everything and not just like honed in on those couple efficiency metrics. So let's bring it back to the top of the draft with Cam Ward before we get to like the late first, because he's starting to settle in basically after Travis Hunter. At this point, Travis Hunter is basically a Cleveland Brown. It's all but been announced at this point. It's pretty clear they intend on taking him at 2, and he's probably going to be a wide receiver first. That's pretty clear as well. So he's settling in as the 102 after Ashton Jeanty. But then the 103, it seems like it's kind of settling in on Cam Ward. A lot of it is because super flex. You got to take the number 1 overall pick quarterback high in super flex. But is he really worth the 103 in super flex drafts? Talk about your thoughts on him a little bit.
So this is a tough one because the value, right? We started to see the value shift. Me and David have been doing this a long time. So, I mean, we're old men now in this space. And so, like, before you saw, like, it's super flex, you take up 101. And then now, I'm starting to see a lot of people say, well, I don't mind putting Jeanty in my flex in that QB spot, or Warren if it's tight end premium or whatever. Like, we're starting to see a lot of like talk like that. As far as Ward goes, obviously it comes down to team dependency and whether you need that quarterback. I don't hate him at 103, depending on what your tiers look like. So if you're sitting there and, like, to me, 102 to 105 is pretty, in the same tier to me. Like, I really think that you can kind of move some guys around in there if you want to, but Ward's part of that. And I think in Superflex, first overall quarterback, I do love the system he's going into. So if he goes to Tennessee, I do like that, QB friendly system from Cincinnati. Like, I think that's great. And I like his arm talent. His off platform stuff is great. And again, I think the one thing you have to do with value wise, he does have insulated value. I mean, and look at Bryce. I mean, Bryce may have had the worst rookie season for a quarterback in fantasy in terms of just his value. And he was still probably getting valued at 112, right? Like the next year, like, oh yeah, I'd send a 112 for him. Now he bounced back, which is great, but he's still in that 112 range. So I still think Cam can hold his value there. And you be okay with it if you need a quarterback. But I think it is more of a floor versus ceiling argument, right? Like, Cam has a pretty good floor. He's got a value floor and he's probably a QB2. And if you're okay with that, you're locking that in, you're excited about that. I don't love the weapons around him, right? I don't know what we're doing with the Calvin Ridley stuff. People are talking about Calvin Ridley being like legitimately like a wide receiver 1. We haven't seen Calvin Ridley wide receiver 1 since he got, suspended for betting. Like, I have not seen that Calvin Ridley in a long time. So, like, the weapons got to improve. So that's why I really think he's a very floor QB2 and maybe a ceiling QB2 as well. So I think it comes down to what kind of, are you going to roll the dice? Would you take Tet over him? Hampton, depending on when he goes there. Warren, I know, tight ends, especially, like, If you want a more of a ceiling play, I think that's where you lean. But if you're looking at it like, I have my rosters kind of filled, I can QB2 is filling there. I get it. I understand it from that value perspective. And if you want to be old school super flex, take a quarterback, I get it from that standpoint too. But to me, it comes down to scoring, because if it's 2.0 tight end premium, I'll take a tight end. I'm okay with taking a tight end in that spot because of the ceiling.
Yeah, and you talk about the value insulation and it being a floor argument a lot for Cam Ward, and you're not wrong. You look at Bryce Young, how he kind of held that value even after a terrible rookie season. But again, you also have like guys like Anthony Richardson, where look where he's valued now. You go back a little further, maybe a guy like Zach Wilson, where it's like, all right, he held it through the first year, but as soon as trouble happens that second year and in a benching's on the horizon, the floor can just fall out quick.
It can.
So the insulation's there, but it's not necessarily there long term. And for me, it is like it's those guys you mentioned, where it's a guy like Omari and Hampton, who to me, he's really clean prospect, just across the board. 2 seasons with over 1,000 yards just after contact. He led the NCAA, and he was second in the NCAA behind only Ashton Jeanty in his 2 seasons in yards after contact. Really good athlete, probably going to be a first-round pick. I mean, there's a ceiling there, and there's a very, I think, higher floor. With Cam Ward, the concern with me is obviously like 5th-year player. He was a 5-year starter. Got to give him credit for that. And he was, I would say, productive at 3 different schools. But the peripherals weren't necessarily great for Cam Ward. He was never above 8 yards per attempt in any of his first 4 seasons. He was at, 7'4", 7'9", 6'4", 7'7", which, all right, it's not terrible, but it's not like jump off the page. PFF passing grade 68.5, 65.3, 58, 77.5 in his first 4 seasons. He was really good in Miami. He was top 3 in his final season in yards per attempt, yards, passing touchdowns. He posted a 90-plus PFF passing grade. But it's really like that one super strong season in his last season. And we talk about like the boom-bust nature of the quarterback position. What is the upside if he does hit? He doesn't really have that rushing upside. He's only averaged 4.7 rushing attempts per game across his career. You look at PFF published this great chart, like a Konami code chart. You have to be above 5.5 to be like considered Konami. Guys in like the 4 to 5 attempts per game range, on average about 14 to 15 fantasy points per game. And that would be outside the top 24. If you look at last year, 15 points per game in quarterbacks. So we need him to hit as a high-end passer to really get there as an upper fantasy option. And even then, like the rushing is just probably just not going to be there. And you talk about guys like Tyler Warren. God, I could gush about him all day long, just about how good his final season was. Not only did he break the record for total yards, he broke it by 400 yards for a tight end in a power conference, but over Brock Bowers, who was the leader before. He put up 1,451 yards. Bowers, who was the record holder at 1,051, 400 yards he broke it by. And then we talk about another guy like maybe even Travion Henderson. What happens if he gets a round one good length? But if he goes to Denver, like I see the floor and the ceiling there, and I don't want to end up with like a bust on one of those top five picks. So it's tough for me to justify putting Cam Ward in the 103. Like I would like him more in the 105, 106, especially 107 range. Like I'm comfortable with him there. I'm very timid taking him at 103.
So I think 2 arguments here. I think the CJ Stroud argument is a good one because look at what CJ, look at his dynasty value. It's just catered, right? Because of that rushing, like you brought up the rushing floor. He doesn't have it. So you really got to be efficient as a passer. Now, I'm not saying Cam Ward is that. He's not CJ Stroud. But then that really limits his upside because if he's not as efficient as a passer, you're really worried about where he goes to. Then you're looking at him like he's getting valued as QB 19-ish right now around Trevor Lawrence, that range, Baker and stuff like that. That might just be his value. So to your point, yeah. Now here's my other argument would be is if you really wanted a quarterback, I'm very comfortable taking a position player in the top 5 and then trading back into the first for like a Shador. I'm okay with that. Like I'm at the back end of the first because there's some rumors now out there Shador is going to fall out of like the top 20, possibly maybe even the first round. Then I'm not going to take him if he falls out of the first round. But because I'm just like I'm just not doing that. I'm just one of those people that if a quarterback doesn't go in the first, I'm out. I never drafted Will Levis. I never drafted Kenny Pickett either because he was terrible. But like if you're looking at like him kind of moving down, if Shador goes in the back end of the first, if I'm looking at I need a quarterback, I do not mind trading up into that back end and getting him, and giving up some resources or assets that aren't too high to go get that quarterback. Or I think people underestimate going out there and getting some of these veteran QBs, right? Like, dude, I cannot tell you, I don't want to go on a tirade here, but Dak Prescott is getting valued way too low. I don't know what the hell is going out there in dynasty markets, but when you're looking at Dak right now, when I go through there, QB 22 to 25, if I can give a back end first or early second plus an asset to go get him, I'm doing that all day. So would I rather have a Tyler Warren plus trade for Dak-ish on the back end? Yes, I would do that all day because Dak is a QB, at least a low end QB1 option, and you get that asset. So I think that there is the strategy to where you can still buy some of these veteran guys, the 30 or over, and they can still give you the numbers that you need. And then you could also still get a top 5 asset.
All right. Well, while you're at it, talk about Tyler Warren a little bit, because I don't know if you heard this, but he sucked in his first few seasons, so he's obviously going to be terrible in the NFL. What are your thoughts on that?
Tyler Warren just is the same as Colston, Loveland, those two guys. I mean, there are plenty of scouts out there and teams that consider these guys to be top 15 players in the draft. Not just top 15 picks, top 15 players. They said, hey, these guys are assets. Now, they might not go top 15. Sometimes that happens. But if you hear people talking about that and they're going to get first-round capital, based on the dynasty landscape at tight end, what makes it think that Tyler Warren won't be tight end at least the top 5 tight end? You could argue that he gets drafted, he's going to be top 8. And then he just does something out there, he's going to be top 5. That's just the position. And Loveland's the same way. So Warren, to me, I love how you can just look at his first few years. And especially, isn't it always like this too, where people will oh, well, tight ends, they don't need to produce in college. They can still be good. But then Tyler doesn't produce for 2 years. Then he produces over 1,200 receiving yards and 200 rushing yards. Oh, well. And then they always try to find an argument. Just say you don't like the player and the position, because if we're talking about a legitimate, hey, this guy is a legitimate prospect. He produces. He didn't need that waste that time. He had 104 receptions, everybody. And now, and on an offense that's not great, Penn State's offense, for those who don't watch college football, it's very inefficient. It was a little better this year, but they still struggle from a receiving standpoint, from a passing offense standpoint. And to me, they're going to use him. He just does he's well-rounded, does all the right things, route running, separation, contact balance. You love that. Also, 12 personnel. Dude's a great blocker, physical blocker. He can get into it, so he's going to get on the field. And to me, Warren just checks all those boxes. It would shock me to not see him and Loveland being top 5 assets at this time next year. And it would not shock me to see Warren be right behind Brock Powers at tight end too.
This time, I think he already is. I think Tyler Warren is the tight end 3 in Dynasty right now today. You talk about the production via Scott Barrett. Warren had 2.82 yards per team passing attempt. Out of all power conference tight ends in the past 15 years, no one else was even over 2.4. He was at 2.82. He's going to be the first tight end to ever post 1,000+ receiving yards in a college season and get drafted round one in the NFL draft. History of humankind. Nobody else has ever done that. The only other tight ends to post 1,000+ yards, receive a 6.0 NFL.com grade, and get drafted first 2 rounds, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. That's it. So you talk about the production in the peak season, it was so good. And the position, we talk about it all the time. You got to be patient with these guys. And it's not just he was behind some schmucks and he just had this one good season. When he came in to Penn State, number 1, Tyler Warren wasn't even a tight end recruit at first. He was a quarterback in high school. Before that, he played running back, fullback, and linebacker. He originally committed to Virginia Tech as a quarterback. Then he switched positions and commitments to tight end in Penn State, and that's when he started learning the position. When he was there was already Pat Freiermuth, who was a 4-star recruit, Brenton Strange, who was a 4-star recruit from class of 2018, 2019. Theo Johnson was also a 4-star recruit with a 96 prospect rate in the same class as Warren. So he's behind these guys in the pecking order, has to work his way up. Even the season before his peak season, he made his way ahead of Theo Johnson. Same number of receptions. More receiving yards. He was second on the team in receiving yards last year, the year before this year. And he led Penn State in receiving touchdowns in his second to last season. So it wasn't just one season to me. It's so much context that's missing from that argument that it's hard for me to really take it seriously.
Yeah. No, I'm with you too. I don't know what the Warren stuff is. Now you can. I totally okay with you having Loveland over Warren because I do. I'm one of those guys, but that doesn't mean that I think that Warren is not good. I think that they both are outstanding, could be top 5 assets in there from a receiving standpoint. Like I understand that argument, but I mean, let's be real. You know how many Harold Fannin Jr. tight end one I saw before the combine? I saw all of that out there, like, and that's fine. But you know, and those same guys are like, well, he had the production, but then they'll knock Warren's production. It's just funny. I don't know how like they wrap their mind around the arguments that they have. But like Warren and Loveland to me are clear tiers to themselves. And after that, there's a huge drop off. I really do feel like there's a drop off of those two. And I don't think the tight end class is as deep as everybody talks about. I really don't.
Yeah, I think it's a 2 tight end class. There are some guys who will have roles in the NFL, but I think really in terms of like holding legitimate fantasy value, it's a 2 tight end class. Yeah. But Loveland's a great prospect as well. I have basically no nitpicks on him other than the yak and missed tackle force, which it's kind of like the Quinshon Judkins argument. Like, yeah, I'm knocking him a little bit for it. I don't have him in that Tyler Warren tier. I have him just 1 tier below. Probably should have him same tier. To me, I just see the ceiling being higher. But at worst, it's a 1A, 1B. Because Loveland was just so productive. Over 2.2 yards per route run for his career. This was more than Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson had as college prospects for their career. So just a really clean prospect, round 1 pick, early declare. I wish I had some athletic testing on him, but I like the size. Not a big film guy. But he looks very smooth. I can imagine a shuttle time would be decent. He just looks like a good mover. I don't think he's going to be a blazing 40 type of guy, but I don't think he's a negative as an athlete. I'm not like highly concerned that we don't have the athletic test, and we don't have it for Tyler Warren either. So let's transfer back to the running backs a little bit, because I know you specialize in the running backs a little bit. So I definitely want to pick your mind on that. Because this is a running back class, right? This is the class of the running back, the 2025 class headlined by Ashton Jeanty. But then we also have guys like Omarion Hampton, who we talked about before. Guys like Trevion Henderson, who we talked about before. How big is the gap between Jeanty and Omarion Hampton and Trevion Henderson? Talk about that. Like if we're talking about a random 2026 first on top of Hampton or Hendo to trade Ashton Jeanty, you taking one of those running backs in the first, or are you just holding on to Ashton Jeanty?
I take the first because I think that while I like Ashton Jeanty, and I do think he's the 101. Like if you want to mark him down, that's fine. I think we're stupid to think that like running backs don't have interchangeable value if there's a first involved too, because I do think landing spots change that. I think that we could be looking at Hampton getting, let's say he goes to Denver or whatever, and then Jeanty goes to Jacksonville. You're looking at both those spots and you're like, well, I think that's pretty close. And I think based on just production and I think fantasy production, those two guys can be similar. Why wouldn't you take the first, right? Because that first, you don't have to pick anybody in the first. It doesn't matter about the 26 first. That just gives you leverage. It gives you trade asset. It gives you kind of an off ramp just in case, one of them gets injured. Like there's so many things that come into those variables. Henderson to me is in the same tier. You can get a first for Henderson plus whatever. If he gets first round capital, you do that. Like I don't think it's like Ashton Jeanty or bust, because we've seen this too many times where like Bijan Robinson's been fine, right? But if someone would have asked you like, would you take Bijan for Gibbs in a first? I take Gibbs in the first. Like I was a Gibbs guy. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, Gibbs has been my running back one for 2 years. Like that's kind of where you look at it. Like, and Gibbs was a very good prospect. He still went first round. But yeah, 100%. Like I still think that you still take the first at any times when you're dealing with running backs because the position's too volatile. Like, and I like all 3 of them. Those are my 3 guys. Like those 3 guys to me are in that they are in top 5, top 6 picks. I love them. I love their value where they're at. And I'm comfortable taking each one. So to me, if I can get a first added on that, absolutely you do that.
Yeah, and the Bijan Gibbs comp is the popular one, but you can go back class further and you look at Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. Like, yeah, sure, Breece Hall's been slightly better than Kenneth Walker. Would you pay a first to turn Kenneth Walker into Breece? No, you're taking the first. So yeah. It's not necessarily that, Ashton Jeanty is overrated, sell. It's just...
It's not about the player.
Yeah. Trevion Henderson and Omarion Hampton are very good running back prospects as well. And I'm seeing people pay more than that. I had someone asked me on Twitter today, 103, 109 in a 2026 first, or the 101. I'm like, guys, Come on here. You take Henderson, and then you can take a guy like Colston Loveland. We're talking about how much you love it, the 109. Pocket the 2026 first. Be on your merry way. Have a nice day. It's getting a little bit out of hand on the Ashton Jeanty front. I feel like people are getting a little bit glazy-eyed and foaming at the mouth a little bit over him, which, to be fair, he's a fantastic prospect. First running back ever to break 150-plus tackles in a season since PFF started charting it. 90-plus PFF rushing grade every season. Only running back in the NCAA in 2023 with a 90-plus PFF rushing and 90-plus PFF receiving grade. So he's also a great receiver, like fantastic guy, but we can go on and on all day about Trevion Henderson too. So it's like there's going to be high. It's the type of season where every player looks like they're the best version of their possible self. So don't get a little too wrapped up in the Jeanty hype. I think people are making some, especially we talk about running backs. And if you're picking 101, unless you inherited that pick, like you need to be putting that pick on the block, and you need to be trying, and not just putting it on the block. You need to be sending offers, and you need to be setting the bar high and seeing if any of these people who are paying that price are in your league, because there's only one way to find out, and it's, you can't get what you don't ask for. So I'm sorry, Ashton Jeanty, but you're going to be a guy who we're going to be trying to sell a lot this offseason. So let's keep it on running backs. We talked about the early guys. We talked about a little bit of a later guy in Quinshon Judkins. Let's talk about another guy who's probably might be in that same tier for you as Judkins. Maybe he's in the next tier. At the top of it, Kaleb Johnson, where he's kind of a little bit of a polarizing prospect. There are pros and there are cons. What are your thoughts on him?
So I've always been down on Kaleb Johnson. I'm not sure where you're at with him. I've always been a very cautious of him. I was never running back 1. He was getting to that territory a little bit early in the year. He's been at running back 2 or 3 a lot. To me, like, he is very, very limited from a scheme perspective. Got to go to zone scheme. He needs to go to one of those schemes in terms of that wide zone, because that's where his bread and butter is, because if you're going to talk about positives for Kaleb, straight line speed and burst. I mean, that is what makes him a strong zone scheme fit. He does that. Like, he gets downhill and it's quick and he's there when there's a hole, right? Now, part of that problem is at Iowa, he was seeing huge holes because that offensive line was so good. Like, that is a legitimate concern with him. Very good contact balance. And the one thing that gives Kaleb Johnson, like, bumps him up a little bit for me, he legitimately has early down workload checkbox. Like, he could do that. Like, his 6'1", 225 at his speed is fine. Like, and he has the early down stuff. That's perfect. But for a guy his size and the positives, he is very limited between the tackles, which makes me nervous because he struggles there. Limited between the tackles, his run style, everything's there. He's virtually non-existent as a receiver, like non-existent. Like, he did a little bit last year, but a lot of his yards came from a couple broken plays. And like, to me, he is not a 3-down guy. Like, very bad at pass protection. Might be the worst pass protector in the group of the top 8 running backs. He might be the worst there. So one thing that concerns me right there is, like, he's not going to, you're already limited to 2 downs basically. And if he gets drafted by a team that does not run a strong zone scheme, like a really good scheme with a very good offensive line, I think he's going to struggle. I think that he really is there. Now, he does, he averaged nearly 4.5 yards after contact, so that's great. But that one cut and go type offense is what he needs. And to me, he's outside my top 4 running backs. Now, he gets to a great spot that's a zone scheme, and you're like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I'm much more comfortable now in the early second than I was when he was going 105. So that's also the value part of it. So, like, yeah, I don't mind taking him in the early second, but I don't want him in the first round. He's not a first-round guy for me right now.
Yeah, I didn't know this was going to be like a Kaleb Johnson hate fest, but I'm on board with you 100%, Kevin, because there are some positives. Like, he was productive as a true freshman. You see over 750 rushing yards as a true freshman. He's an early declare. Obviously, his final season, over 20 touchdowns, 1,500 plus rushing yards, 4.42 yards after contact per attempt. There are some good things to look at. But there are also, like, a lot of, like you said, those red flags. And you talk about the number one would be the zone dependency. So you look at the running backs in this class, and this is a chart provided by Fantasy Football Insights at @fball_insights. Definitely follow him on Twitter. He posted the gap zone percentages for the running backs in this class. Nobody was higher than Kaleb Johnson. 80% of his rushing attempts in zone in the 2024 season. So he was heavily dependent on the zone scheme. And we saw he was really good in it. Obviously 4.4 yards after contact, but the first two seasons didn't have good yards after contacts per attempt, 3.34, 2.62. I think he dealt with injury in 2023. We saw that kind of with Travion Henderson as well, dip below 3 yards after contact per attempt in his injury year. So I don't want to hold that too much against him. But again, we have 1 out of 3 seasons where he was good after contact, 80.4, 64.7, and 86.7 PFF rushing grade. So again, we have 1 bad year of grading, 1 good year, and 1 pretty good year. And then again, you talk about the receiving. He had 5 total targets in the entire season in his freshman year. 5 total targets in the entire 2023 season. So again, like, not a guy who's going to add anything as a receiver. They're probably going to find someone else to do that at the next level. And then you talk about the athleticism concerns. He not only had a poor 40, I think 4.57, he had a 1.62 10-yard split. This was the worst 10-yard split by any running back who participated in the combine going back to 2019. Nobody ran a slower split than Kaleb Johnson coming out of the block. So again, you talk about doesn't really have that short area burst at the beginning. Like, he's kind of relying on finding these runways like he did at Iowa State. But how much are you going to find that at the NFL level? Especially, again, what if he's drafted to not even a zone heavy scheme in the NFL level? We talk about the draft capital. He's like looking more like a fringe late second, early third round NFL draft pick. Especially falls to the third. That's the downside we're looking at. It's like a Trey Benson. Like, it's all right. Maybe he holds some value through his rookie year, but maybe he's just stuck behind a veteran who's better than him. So I have some concerns as well. I'm seeing people taking him in the late first over, especially in mocks, and over Luther Burden, over Emeka Ibuka, who are going to be first, early second round picks, over a guy like Matthew Golden, who, even if you don't love the analytical profile, that's a top 12 pick. A guy like Kaleb Johnson might even get drafted in the first 2 rounds. And no matter how you feel about Shedeur and Jackson Dart, those guys are going to have, like we talked about, more of a value insulation and certainly more of a value ceiling than a guy like Kaleb Johnson, who's going to be, like a 2-down plotter. So I'm out on him as well. If he falls to the mid-second, sure, like 203, like, all right, I'll take a chance on Kaleb Johnson if he's in the right scheme. Hope it works out. Probably try and trade the pick for a veteran like Alvin Kamara, if you're me, instead of taking him. But I don't really want to draft Kaleb Johnson. So we're in agreement there. I think that's most of like the, debatable points in the upper part of the class. So I want to just talk before we get to the rapid fire, try and keep us under an hour here. Just talk about maybe some of your favorite sleepers in the class. Some of the guys who aren't looking like, top, 20 rookie picks, and guys who maybe are going to go in the late second into the third, maybe even the 4th round, maybe even undrafted. Who are the guys who you kind of like a lot?
Yeah, I'll start with running backs because that's what this class is, right? It's just running backs. That's like what everybody's talking about, and everybody's kind of mentioned these guys, and they love them there. There's a guy that just keeps, popping up for me in terms of he's not necessarily great at anything. But he's pretty good at everything. I don't know. It's a weird combination, but he had a good relative athletic score at 9.75. And that's DJ Giddens from Kansas State. And when you're looking at his profile, 3-year kid. So that's a check. Like, I love that he's just 3-year kid. He came out early. Basically the last 2 years, he's averaged over basically 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Very good receiver. Very solid there. Basically 600 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns the last 2 years as well. But just a very good athlete, clean footwork, lateral quickness. You love that. Really creative in space, elusive, vision, ball security with only 3 career fumbles, over 500 carries. So you love that there too. And really what kind of just knocks him a little bit is probably just, not as explosive as a runner as probably people want. Pass protection needs it to stay on the field in 3rd down. But when you're looking at him as a mid-round guy, as someone that's probably going to go in the 3rd round of your rookie drafts, he checks boxes for me. Can he do 3-down work? Yes, he can. Can he be early down guy? Yeah, he can. And to me, if he gets to a spot where he's going to battle someone for running back 2, I'm all aboard that. Like, because if he can get there and he can win that job, he's the type of guy that can come in and be a 3-down back for a team. And our comp for him and our rookie guy that we're dropping on Monday is Rashad White. And I think it makes a lot of sense for what Rashad's profile was coming out of college as well. And like, It's not pretty. Like Rashad's never been pretty, but he puts up fantasy numbers. And I think if Giddens can find himself on a roll in a team like that, I think he could do the same thing. So DJ to me is one of those guys that stands out at the running back position. And then Damian Martinez. I like Damian Martinez. Again, 3-year guy coming out of Miami, basically almost had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Receiving profile is a little better than people think. I think that, again, ton of 30-yard plus runs that you see there, especially when you're looking at PFF numbers. Very, very good in between the tackles, very reliable early down short yardage guy. So to me, I think he's very just early down short yardage, capable, can really do that. We actually comped him to Le'Veon Bell. Like we actually have that comp from a play style comp. Like that's our play style for him. But just efficient guy. So those two guys stand out to me as being 3-down guys, can really find a role on their team, and a guy that would be like, wow, this kid is, how is this kid now running back 12? Like just the guy that just pops off for you that you really like.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned those two names because I literally have them like back to back in my rankings at the top of like that third round turn where I'm like, all right, I want to take a chance on these guys. Giddens, I do have him as a 4th-year player. I have him as class of 2021. I got to do some double checking on that because I think there was something to do with him walking on.
Maybe red
but
shirt.
either way,
I have to look.
yeah, I have him as a redshirt junior.
Okay.
But I love what I see as well from the production standpoint. Back-to-back seasons with 1,200 plus rushing yards. He was good after contact, over 4 yards after contact per attempt in his final season. He was a very efficient receiver, 11 plus yards per reception every year. So maybe not super involved, but he seemed to do well with it. He was top 12 in breakaway percentage as a junior. So a guy who showed that big play ability. And then we saw it at the combine. Like you said, 6 foot 212, 4'4", 340. You saw it in the vertical too. 39.5-inch vertical, 10 foot 10-inch broad jump. Both of those jumps were second highest amongst 2025 running backs. So NFL size, NFL athleticism. He had an 85 plus PFF rushing grade every single season of his career that he played. So that's a guy I like a lot, especially talking about 3rd round pick. Like you don't love spending 3rd round picks, but a guy like Giddens, maybe in the top of the 3rd, like there's going to be some depth in this class where maybe there's some guys he turns out to be, like one of those guys who hits in the 3rd round. We had like Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy last year. Martinez, another guy I like too, I think could hit. He's going to be more of like an early down runner, kind of like more in like the David Montgomery mold. But again, 3-year starter, true freshman breakout, out over 1,000 yards, total yards, all 3 seasons in his career. In terms of PFF grading, the only guys with a higher PFF rushing grade than him in 2024, Ashton Jeanty and Cam Scatterblue. That's it. And then we had Damian Martinez, 94.3 PFF rushing grade. We talked about earlier Quinshon Judkins, 2 out of 3 years, 90 plus PFF rushing grade, never below 87.1. Well, Damian Martinez, 2 out of 3 years above 90 PFF rushing grade, never above 88.1. So he had a higher single season PFF rushing grade and a higher worst PFF rushing grade than Judkins. Never mind all the efficiency metrics. He was really good at after contact, 3.82 and 4.46 yak per attempt in his final 2 seasons. Almost 4 for his career, 3.91 career yak per attempt. Again, not involved as a receiver. 4, 11, 17 receptions in 3 seasons. Career, 0.73 yards per route run. But he was a really good runner. And the athleticism was pretty good too in terms of how he tested. Almost broke into the 4.4s. I think it was 4.5, 140. So I like what I saw out of that too at the combine. I like Damian Martinez as well. One other guy I would throw out there, because we talk about it's a running back class, and then it's a deep tight end class. Like, and it's kind of like it feels like this guy's getting lost in the shuffle because once we get to the 3rd, 4th round, people almost stop caring about draft capital, and they're just like, "Give me a running back. Like, give me any running back on a 53." But there's a guy by the name of Torrey Horton who was very productive in college. He was involved as a true freshman and sophomore at Nevada. He was the team's leading wide receiver all 3 seasons he was at Colorado State. We got to go per game final season because he got injured after 6 games. But he was 5th in the NCAA in receptions in 2023. He had an 86.9 PFF receiving. That was 1 spot ahead of Jaden Higgins that year, just for reference, who Jaden Higgins again talked about as a late 1st, 2nd round pick. Horton was good in contested situations. He was above a 50% success rate in 4 out of 5 seasons. career 53.3% contested catch success rate. That's good. He was shifty after the catch, 6 yards after the catch per reception, and 21 missed tackles forced in 2023. So he was a guy who can do stuff with the ball in his hands. He was extremely efficient, over 2 yards per route run in 4 out of 5 seasons, 2.15, 1.78, 2.77, 2.74, 3.45 in his final season. Career 2.49 yards per route run. This guy also tested like a great athlete. He ran a 4.4, 140, 37.5-inch vertical at 6'2.5", 196. So he's long, he's fast, and that was coming off of knee surgery. Like people weren't even sure if this guy was going to test, and then he tested and he was freaking good. And then guess what? His reception perception profile comes out today, and I'm just waiting for like my priors to get destroyed, like they were with Jalen Royals, who was a guy who I was like, just like Torrey Horton, I was just going on and on with all the things I love about him. But then his reception perception profile dropped, and it was like 35th percentile against man. Let me see. I'll pull up the rest of Jalen Royals' profile. But needless to say, it was disappointing. Now I'm like holding my head. Oh, what am I going to do with Jalen Royals if he falls to the third round? He's got a bad reception perception profile. I got to ignore all the other stuff because he's probably not going to be good. 46th, 20th, and 35th percentile for Royals. But not Torrey Horton. Torrey Horton, I can hold on to those priors because he's a baller. 71st percentile, 62nd percentile, and 94th percentile versus man zone and press. Above 70th versus man, above 90th versus press, and even above 60th versus zone. Holy shit, this guy is good. I think Torrey Horton is good. I'm going to shout it from the rooftops because he's a mid-third? Like, he's probably going to shoot up if he gets drafted round 3, but still, to where? He's still going to be probably a third-round rookie pick. He might fall to the 4th round in some, where guys are taking 6th-round running backs over him. I want to draft Torrey Horton because I think he's good. He's a guy who I'm looking for wide receivers late, and some guys, their profiles just aren't being complete. Again, Tej Johnson was another guy, but he's so small. His reception perception profile sucks too. It's Torrey Horton. He's the late round wide receiver I want. He's my wide receiver sleeper for 2025. I'm pounding the table for him.
So you're right about Torrey. I don't want to jump on that. You did a good job there. 2 guys I just want to mention. I'm way higher on Ty Felton than everybody. So I love me some Ty Felton from Maryland. Had a pretty good year this year for Maryland, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. Obviously a lot of scheme touches though. So when you go through his film, it's a lot of scheme touches there. So that does detriment, but I don't think he's going to get drafted in. So he's like a deep waiver wire guy. The other one that I think is fun, Isaac Tesla. Or not Tesla. I think his name is Tesla. Yeah.
Tesla.
However you want to say
you pronounce it. But I know there's 2 A's.
From Arkansas, 9.93 relative athletic score. Again, 4th round, probably waiver wire guy. It's a fun athleticism. Try to go after it there. Very good after the catch, and he tracks the ball well on deep balls too. He can win vertically, deep crossers, do those things. But again, his upside doesn't typically last too long in the NFL. I think that there are people going to maybe draft him. I think there's a sleeper area there. And I'd be remiss not to announce, I got to talk about my tight end 3. It's Mason Taylor. I love Mason Taylor. He might not be a sleeper. I don't know because I still get him in 3rd round of rookie drafts. And maybe that's just because the draft capital hasn't caught up to that. But 8.89 relative athletic score. He's got the pedigree, right? He's got the Hall of Fame last name, the Taylor traits. You're looking at just a reliable middle of the field guy that was playing behind Malik and Brian Thomas Jr., but he still became kind of their go-to first down guy. Love his route running, love his reliable hands, his usage, his IQ. Just from a tight end perspective, if there's one guy I'm taking after the top 2, it's Mason Taylor.
I got some good news and some bad news. What do you want first?
I'll take the bad news. I'm an educator. Give me the bad news first. I'm used to it.
Well, the bad news is we got some reception perception profiles that dropped today. Luckily, they dropped today just in time for this episode. So shout out Matt Harmon. Make sure you guys subscribe to that as well. Definitely worth the $20, whatever it is, $30 for the year. But we got some profiles on Ty Felton and Isaac Tesla. Ty Felton, 22nd percentile versus man, 18th percentile versus press. So that's not good. I would say one good thing, 59th percentile versus zone. So that's a good number. But overall, do not like those numbers for the reception perception profile.
Doesn't shock me.
I don't know a ton about Ty Felton, so I'm not going to take a hard stance there. Isaac Tesla, 35th percentile versus man, 62nd versus zone, 15th versus press. So a little better than Felton versus man and zone. Not very good versus press. One guy who did kind of stand out for like the ones that were dropped today was a guy by the name of Andrew Armstrong, who I have not done a ton of research on. 38th percentile versus main, 71st percentile versus zone, 83rd percentile versus press. So definitely going to have to do some more research into Armstrong. I've seen a couple people posting about him lately. So I really got to get some notes down on him before we go into the draft. Mason Taylor, though, I think that tight end 3 take you made is going to be a lot closer to consensus after the draft. I'm in agreement with you there because I'm seeing him mocked as a second-round pick in a lot of spots. I'm hearing talk of him maybe going in the late first. Like, what happens if the Kansas City Chiefs draft Mason Taylor? It's going to be like, okay, what are we doing with this guy? And I do think there's some positives. Obviously, we're going to have the draft capital is going to be there. He's an early declare as well, which you like to see. So when you just look at guys who are drafted in the first and second round, we have about a 90% and a 40% hit rate for a top 12 season. So if he's drafted round 1, he's pretty much guaranteed to produce a top 12 season at some point. And if he's drafted round 2, he's pretty much got a 40% chance at producing a top 12 season at some point. So those are pretty decent odds. The NFL.com grading is good, 6.4 NFL.com grade. I don't really love anything else I see, though. Like, he was productive as a true freshman, and I'll give him that. I do like that. But all of the, like, production thresholds I look for and the yards after contact stuff, he doesn't really hit it. He wasn't very efficient, 10.1 yards per catch for his career, only 5.4 yak per reception, only 5 missed tackle force in his best season. Career 1.1 yards per route run, only a 70 PFF receiving grade in his best season. He didn't test at the combine. He had good pro day scores. I got to get those into my system, but he was like mid 4.6s. Put up a fuck ton of bench reps, which I was not expecting, like 27 bench reps or something like that. So there's some good in his profile, but I'm a little bit concerned. He would be, in terms of dominator rating, he would be the lowest dominator rating of any top 12, any top 15, any top 20 dynasty tight end in the dynasty market. He's going to have the lowest career dominator rating. He's going to have the lowest career yards per route run of any tight end in the top 20 dynasty market. So the production just was not there in terms of efficiency yards. But again, he's playing on LSU with guys like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. You're going to have to add a little bit of context like that. It's not like Harold Ferdinand Jr. You put Mason Taylor and Harold Ferdinand Jr. swap spots, he's going to average more than 1.1 yards per route run in Bowling Green. I'm pretty sure about that. But that being said, I think the draft capital is going to be there. If you can draft a guy who's a first or second round pick in the third round of rookie drafts, it almost doesn't matter what position he plays.
Yeah.
You know, if he's a kicker in a kicker league, you're definitely drafting him. Like, he can play almost any position. So Mason Taylor, I don't mind that one. The film guys certainly love him. He's much higher in the film community than he is in the analytics community. So that's it for the discussion. It was great. We're going to do one more thing, though, before I let you go. And we're going to put you on the hot seat, which I love to do. We're going to do our 90-second rapid fire, especially because we got rookie drafts 3 days away. We are going to ask you questions which you haven't seen. You don't know what you're going to be asked, just to let the audience know this is definitely the hot seat. And I'm going to give you 90 seconds. We'll see if you can get there in time. If not, we'll see how much you go over by. And I'm going to give you a pick or a player. I'm going to say, do you want 101 or blank? Do you want 102 or blank, 103 or blank in a 12-team Superflex 1.5 tight end premium format? You're going to answer as fast as you can. Are you ready, Kevin?
Yeah, let's roll.
All right. I'm not ready. Let me get my timer. Did all that blabbing, didn't even get the timer ready. I'm not that good at multitasking on podcasts. All right, let's see. Timer is ready. All right, it's going to start it after I ask the first question. Kevin, in a 12-team Superflex 1.5 tight end premium format, are you taking the 101 or are you taking Brian Thomas Jr.?
I'll take Brian Thomas Jr.
What about 101 or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
102 or Bucky Irving.
102.
102 or J.J. McCarthy.
Ooh, I'll take JJ.
103 or T. Higgins.
103.
103 or Brock Purdy.
103.
104 or Rome Odunze.
I'll take Rome.
105 or Michael Penix Jr.
Ooh, give me the 105.
106 or Dak Prescott.
Oh, my boy Dak. I'll take Dak.
107 or Kenneth Walker.
Kenneth Walker.
108 or Xavier Worthy.
108.
109 or Derrick Henry.
109.
110 or Christian McCaffrey.
CMC.
111 or Jalen Waddle.
111.
112 or Tyreek Hill.
112.
Woo! You killed it. Under 60 seconds. 54-29. I got one question for you there. I think we're definitely saw the Dak Prescott one coming when we were talking about it earlier in the show. And I also agree Dak Prescott is a screaming buying dynasty. Don't forget how good he was just the year before when he actually had like a somewhat competent offense around him. They get a wide receiver too. It's game on again. You took the 111 over Jalen Waddle. He's somebody who's fallen a lot in value. Talk about your thoughts there. What are you trying to do with that 111 instead?
The problem is like I'm a big Waddle. I was a Waddle guy going into, he's my wide receiver too going out of college. The injuries concern me. That team is a mess. And so I just don't see, like, even if I see a lot of talk about Hill leaving, Waddle's going to step up. I don't think Waddle's a wide receiver one. Like, I think he needs a wide receiver one to be there. And I think that actually will hurt him more than anything. So if you're sitting at the 111 and you're going through some of the rookie drafts and picks, like you can sit there 1.5, maybe get a tight end. Going through some of like the mocks that we've done recently, maybe a Mecca sitting there, and I'd rather have a Mecca Buka over Jalen Waddle. I really would. And then some of the other wide receivers, if you're going to flip it, maybe Matthew sitting there, Luther Burden could be slipping. We didn't talk about Luther, but I still believe Luther back in first is a great pick. Or like we mentioned, Quinshon Judkins, he's been going 111, 112 too. Like, I just think the re-roll of the rookies for Waddle, if you can get a late first for Waddle, I'm totally okay re-rolling that and going with the youth.
Yeah, I'm glad you snuck in Luther Burden at the end there too, because it almost seems wrong to do my one pre-draft rookie show and not even mention the guy because I've been pounding the table, and I'm glad we're in agreement. Love Luther Burden. Let's just finish up. I want to hear your thoughts a little bit more. Talk about, you're obviously not concerned about the quote-unquote manufactured touch role and the gadget role. What can this guy do? Why do you like him?
Don't you like, so the thing about the manufactured touch role, like, don't you want your receivers to get manufactured touches? Like, because the team is saying we need to get him the football. Like, that's the one thing there. Like, yeah, of course, Missouri wants to manufacture touches for Luther Burden. They're freaking Missouri. Who do you think they're going to get the ball to? Like, that's part of it. And the one thing about Luther, he's a big game kid. Like, when they were playing Alabama, they were playing the big schools, he did show up. Like, elite athleticism, body control, really good yards after the catch. And when focused, there is a focus issue. Like, there is that. He has remarkable concentration, great play style, everything. So he's got to figure that out. Like, he's a top 10 player in the class of, like, at his best, he's a top 10 player, like, in the class. Like, he has a Jamar Chase skill set, like, at his best. Like, if he hit his ceiling, that's the skill set he has. Now, he does have some issues off the field, and we've seen that, but a lot of wide receivers do. Our comp for him was DJ Moore, and I think he'd be a very solid DJ Moore type prospect. And if you got a DJ Moore fantasy production from him at the late first, you'd be excited about that. So to me, I'm not as worried about his off-field stuff and all of that stuff, because I think that if once he's in the NFL, he's going to be one of those players like, oh, this is where I wanted to go. What do I need to succeed? And I'm going to take the baked-in value now. And I'm totally, if he's going to slip, I'll draft him there.
Yeah, and I love how you talk about why wouldn't you want to manufacture touches for Luther Burden? People don't talk about the year before when he gained over 60% of his yardage on passes 10 plus yards down the field. In 2023, he was not just a manufactured touch guy. He was a guy who was making plays down the field. He had a 54.5 and a 56.5 contested catch rate in his 2 seasons as starter. So he was really good as a contested catch guy down the field. He was not the guy who's just, you got to throw it short because he can't go get the ball. He's a guy who can run routes down the field and talk about the route running. Perception, 68th percentile versus man. 55th and 59th versus zone and press. This is a guy who's clearing 55% in the upper 1/3 versus man. Like, so it's like, all right, he can run routes, he can make contested catches. Never mind the fact that he's the best tackle breaker in the class easily. Yeah. He is the only player in PFF history to break 30 plus tackles on 80 or fewer targets in a season. He led the NCAA in his down 2024 season in broken tackles on receptions. He only had 61 receptions, and he had 30 broken. That's like a broken tackle every other reception. You talk about, at his best, you talk about Jamar Chase, like another guy like Malik Neighbors, and he had a lot of these same concerns. Now I'm hearing that slot fades are a bad thing for Luther Burden. Not only did he have screens, he had slot fades. Slot fades are a bad thing now? Are you kidding me? This is a bad thing that he had production on slot fades? Like, this would have been a great case against Malik Neighbors coming out as well. So I don't understand that at all, that we're now knocking players for slot fades. That feels like just a reach for me. So I see the production. I see the athleticism. This guy ran a 4.4 140 at 6 foot 206. The only other guys to get a 90-plus PFF receiving grade as sophomores in a power conference, Jamar Chase and Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's it. So Luther Burden, and his 5-star recruit, 98 prospect grade, came in as viewed as an amazing player, was amazing as a sophomore, is a good athlete, good route runner, amazing tackle breaker, good in content. He can do it all. He can do everything. So I see the Neighbors upside comp. I think Percy Harvin, Deebo Samuel, some sort of blend of those two players. I mean, I really love Luther Burden. I want to rank him as wide receiver 1. I don't know if he's going to get drafted in round 1 because of the off-field stuff. So it's like, if I got to rank him lower, he's even more of a smash pick. If I can get Luther Burden 112, 201, God, I'm going to be just foaming at the mouth over that. So very much in on Luther Burden. That takes us just over an hour there. I'm glad we could finish with a pounding of the table for Luther Burden, because I think we both agree he deserves it. He's still a good player, and people are nitpicking the manufacturer touches just way too much when you look at all the other stuff he can do and has proven that he can do. So that's a great way to finish it. Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. Thank you for giving us a full hour. Appreciate all of your time. You guys, make sure you're following Kevin on Twitter. I don't know if he's at 1 million followers yet, but he should be. So if he's not, make sure you're giving him that follow, getting him there. Make sure you're, again, Devi Royale as well. Make sure you're following there. Check out the Patreon as well. I know you guys love all that extra content, especially Devi. You're going to be way ahead of the game. You start getting content there. And again, check out our Patreon as well. Shout out to all our patrons. Listen, thank you guys. You guys are the best. Appreciate you. You're awesome. And have a good one. Let's go crush those rookie drafts. Enjoy the NFL draft. It's going to be a hell of a time. Let's go.